You know, there are some things in life that you can fix. You can fix a broken fence. You can fix a failing business. You can fix a friendship that went cold. But some things you break so completely, so thoroughly, that even when they're finally repaired, you can still see every single crack. And I broke my son. Not physically, never that, but in every other way a father can break a child, I did it. For 30 years I was selfish, absent, cold, and cruel in my silence. And my son Thomas paid for it every single day of his childhood and most of his adult life. And I'm telling you this at 84 years old because Thomas forgave me, and I still don't fully understand why. And I think about that every single day. My name is Edward. I'm 84 years old, and I need to start by being honest about who I was as a young man. I was not a good person, not in the way that matters most. I was raised by a father who showed no emotion, no warmth, no affection. My father believed that a man's job was to provide, and that was the beginning and the end of fatherhood. You didn't hug your children. You didn't say, "I love you." You didn't ask how they were feeling. That was weakness in my father's house. And like so many men of my generation, I took everything my father gave me, the coldness, the distance, the silence, and I passed it straight down to my own son. Didn't even question it. Didn't even realize I was doing it. That's the thing about generational patterns. You know, they don't feel like patterns when you're inside them. They just feel like normal, like the way things are. Thomas was born when I was 29 years old, and I remember holding him in the hospital. This tiny perfect thing. And I felt something I didn't have a name for at the time. I know now it was love, pure and fierce and overwhelming. But I had no idea what to do with it. My father never showed me. And so I just put it somewhere inside me, locked it away, and told myself that working hard and paying the bills was how you showed a child you loved them. And that was the first mistake, the first of many. When Thomas was growing up, I was physically present. I lived in the house. I sat at the dinner table. I drove him to school sometimes. But emotionally, I was a ghost. Thomas would come home from school excited about something, a drawing he made, a good grade he got, something funny that happened at recess, and I would look up from my newspaper for maybe 2 seconds and say something like, "That's fine, son," and go back to reading. "That's fine, son." Like, can you imagine? A little boy running in through the door, full of light and energy, and wanting his father to see him, and all he gets is, "That's fine, son." I cringe now thinking about it, but at the time, I genuinely thought I was being a perfectly adequate father, because adequate was all I had ever seen. The real damage started when Thomas was around 8 years old. I had started drinking, not heavily at first, a drink after work, a few on weekends. But you know how these things go. The drinks got more frequent, the amounts got larger, and the man who came home in the evenings was often not a man Thomas deserved to be around. I wasn't violent, I want to be clear about that. I never raised a hand to my son, but I was mean in that cold, surgical way that sober people sometimes don't believe is as damaging as physical harm. I would criticize everything Thomas did. His grades were never good enough. His friends were never good enough. His interest, he loved drawing and painting, this beautiful, sensitive boy. His interests were, according to me, a waste of time. I remember one evening he showed me a painting he had done at school. He must have been about 9, and it was actually beautiful, really beautiful, a landscape with a river and trees. And I looked at it and said, "That's not going to pay any bills," and put it face down on the table and went back to my drink. He was 9 years old. I can still see his face. By the time Thomas was a teenager, the distance between us was like a canyon, just this enormous silent space that neither of us knew how to cross. He stopped trying to show me things, stopped trying to make me proud, stopped bringing friends home because he was embarrassed by me. And I told myself, teenagers, that's just how they are. He'll come around. But it wasn't teenage rebellion. It was a boy protecting himself from a father who had spent years making him feel small. Thomas was brilliant, you know, really genuinely brilliant. He won an art scholarship at 17, a real prestigious scholarship to a proper art school. And do you know what I said when he told me? I said, "You can forget about that. You're going to study something useful." Just like that. No discussion, no consideration of what he wanted, no acknowledgement of what he had achieved. I just shut it down like it was nothing. And Thomas never fully forgave me for that, not for a long time. And I understand why. I took something from him that day that I had no right to take. He went to study accounting, spent 30 years in a career that never made him happy, because I decided at 17 what his life should look like. Thomas left home at 18, and the distance between us went from a canyon to something that didn't even have a name. He got married in his 20s. I found out 2 weeks after the wedding he hadn't invited me. He had 2 children, my grandchildren, Emily and Robert. I met them maybe 4 or 5 times in their entire childhoods, 4 or 5 times. My own grandchildren. And the worst part? At the time I told myself it was his fault. I told myself he was being dramatic, oversensitive, that I hadn't been that bad. That's the thing about being the person who caused the damage. You always minimize it. You always find a way to make yourself the reasonable one in the story. I was the unreasonable one. I just couldn't see it yet. For nearly 30 years, Thomas and I had almost no relationship. A phone call on Christmas sometimes. A brief, awkward visit every few years. Conversations that stayed so carefully on the surface that you could have had them with a stranger. And I just let it be that way. Because confronting it meant confronting myself. And I wasn't ready to do that. My wife, Margaret, Thomas's mother, she tried for years to bridge the gap between us. She would say, "Edward, call him. Just call him and say you're sorry." And I would say, "Sorry for what? I provided for that boy his whole life." I actually said that. Sorry for what? Even now, I can barely stand to admit that. Margaret died when I was 76, and I won't spend too long on this because even now it's difficult. She was the best person I ever knew, patient and warm and endlessly forgiving of my faults in a way I never deserved. And when she died, I was alone, truly alone. Thomas came to the funeral. We stood beside each other at the grave, and I looked at him, this 50-something-year-old man who still had his mother's eyes, and something cracked open in me, like, you know when ice breaks in the spring? That sound? That's what it felt like inside my chest. I reached out and I took his hand at the graveside, and he let me hold it. He didn't pull away, and I stood there holding my son's hand for the first time in I don't know how many decades, and I cried. Not polite, quiet tears. I mean really cried. The kind of crying that comes from somewhere very deep and very old. And Thomas put his arm around me. Even then, even after everything, he put his arm around me. After Margaret's funeral, I called Thomas, and it wasn't easy. Neither of us knew quite how to do this, how to start, where to begin with 30 years of distance and damage. But we tried. We started meeting for coffee. Awkward at first. So many silences. So many topics we automatically steered away from. But slowly, very slowly, we started to talk. Really talk. And Thomas told me things I needed to hear even though they were hard. He told me about the painting, how he had cried for a week after I shut down his scholarship, how for years he couldn't pick up a paintbrush without hearing my voice in his head saying it wasn't good enough. He told me about the wedding, why he hadn't invited me. He said, "Dad, I couldn't have your energy at the happiest day of my life. I just couldn't." He told me about the loneliness of his childhood, coming home to a house where he felt invisible, where he learned very early that the safest thing was to want as little as possible from me, so there was as little as possible to be disappointed about. And I listened. I didn't defend myself. I didn't explain. I just listened. And I said, "I'm sorry, Thomas. I am so deeply sorry." And he looked at me for a long time. And then he said, "I know, Dad. I know." So, what do I want you to take from all of this? I'm 84 years old. I wasted 30 years of my son's life, and 30 years of my own being too proud and too afraid and too damaged to be the father he needed. And I want to say some things directly, clearly, because I don't have the luxury of time that you might still have. Nobody told me this. I just absorbed my father's coldness and passed it directly to Thomas without a single moment of conscious thought. The patterns of how you were raised will repeat themselves automatically unless you examine them deliberately and choose differently. Examine them. Choose differently. I provided for Thomas his entire childhood: food, shelter, clothing, education. And he grew up feeling completely invisible, because what children need most is not what you buy them or what you pay for. It is your attention, your genuine, interested, loving attention. Nothing else comes close. I took Thomas's art from him at 17 with 4 words that echoed in his head for decades. You have enormous power over your children's sense of what is possible for them. Use that power carefully. Encourage more than you doubt. Support more than you criticize. I held on to my pride for 30 years, too proud to say sorry, too proud to admit I was wrong, too proud to make myself vulnerable enough to reach out. And that pride cost me 30 years with my son. Whatever pride is protecting you from right now, it is not worth what it is costing you. Thomas and I found each other eventually, built something real in these last years, and I am grateful beyond words for that. But we lost 30 years. 30 years of his children growing up. 30 years of Christmases and conversations and ordinary Tuesdays that we can never get back. Don't wait 30 years. Start today. Thomas chose to forgive me. I couldn't make him. I couldn't rush it. I couldn't negotiate for it. All I could do was show up, be honest, listen, change, and hope. If you have hurt someone and you are waiting for their forgiveness, stop waiting and start changing. That is the only path. Thomas is coming for dinner on Sunday. He's bringing Emily and Robert, my grandchildren, who are 23 and 20 now, and who have given me a chance I absolutely do not deserve. And I'm going to cook, badly probably. Thomas always says I cook like a man who learned everything he knows from a can opener. And we're going to sit around the table and talk, really talk, about everything and nothing, the way families are supposed to. And I'm going to look at my son across that table, and I'm going to remember the little boy with the painting, and the teenager with a scholarship, and the man who came to his mother's grave and let me hold his hand. And I'm going to think, I almost missed all of this. 30 years, I almost missed all of this. Don't miss yours. You know, whatever has gone wrong between you and your child, your father, your son, your daughter, however long the silence has been, however deep the damage goes, pick up the phone. Not tomorrow, not when you feel ready. You will never feel ready. Right now. Because Thomas didn't have to forgive me. He chose to. And that choice, his choice, gave me back something I thought I had lost forever. Don't wait until you're 84 to find out if the people you hurt are still willing to make that choice. Go find out today. And if they are, don't waste a single day of it. I love you, Thomas. Thank you, son.